All right. I think I'm ready to go on my part. How about you guys?
Yeah, I think so.
Yup.
As far as anyone can be ready for the Flick Lab experience. But
Indeed.
hitting the theme tune and then we can start after. Привет! Добро, пожаловать в лабораторию. Did I get it right?
I think so. Yes, that was very good.
Thanks. As a guest today, we have Mr. Ali Pitts from the Russophiles Unite movie podcast. Welcome.
Привет, привет. Thank you very much for having me on the show. It's very kind of you.
Well, it's very kind of you to join us, and this has been coming for a while. We were trying to get you to the podcast earlier, but life happened, and now we're finally here.
Yes, I was the mysterious would have been guest for the Come and See episode. So if you ever wondered who that was supposed to be, that was me just being a bit flaky and like deciding I didn't want to put myself through that movie again.
Yeah, that's completely understandable. Actually, we timed that episode to be the Christmas episode, Henrik. Isn't that right, my co-host?
Was it our Christmas episode?
It was, and that was the whole joke about it. Very fun.
And it was. I mean, I haven't seen Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence, but I understand that it's Christmassy, kind of in name only.
It is very colorful and joyous film.
I know enough about that film to suspect that's not entirely true.
Yeah, that was the previous year's Christmas episode.
So what is it for this year? Is it Salo or something like that?
Well, Henrik was supposed to drop me the name, but I don't think this has been yet decided. Or how is it looking like, Henrik?
I have few suggestions.
Okay.
Like 3 of them. And we can see if we agree on any of my picks or if you just wanna, dictate what we are gonna check out. None of them is Die Hard because I refuse to do Die Hard as a Christmas episode.
No. We will do it as a summer film. You forget.
I actually had last Christmas. I watched the first 2 back to back with my father-in-law, and yeah, there's a distinct quality drop off between 1 and 2, and we got to the end of.
It's not that bad. Part 2
it's still enjoyable. Don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. 2 is fun, and I think we pretty much at the end of it, we turned to each other and went, "That was kind of stupid, but I still enjoyed it."
It felt like a complete rip-off of the first one in many ways.
Yeah,
it's not that bad.
It's not that bad though. I can watch it.
Yeah,
and it has T-1000 in it, so.
It does indeed. Yeah, I remember being surprised when he turned up because I think that was the first time I'd actually seen 2 beginning to end. Oh no, I haven't seen the Moscow set one because I refuse to acknowledge that existence. I mean, maybe we'll cover it on Russophiles eventually, but I don't know. Someone would have to pay me a significant bribe based on what I've heard about it.
It's as someone who has checked the entire series, I can say that with a vengeance, and this comes from someone who is kind of an apologist for part 2, but
as we just discovered, yeah.
Yeah, but with a vengeance, it's the last good Die Hard film.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I heard that's the general consensus because I've seen 4 and it was enjoyable, but at the same time, it was just completely stupid.
It is, and the Moscow one, was it Good Day to Die Hard or something like that? It's a complete disaster. It's a film that I'm positive. This I have a strong belief that that the Moscow one was never intended to be a Die Hard movie. It
Mm.
was some other script, and then they just doctored it to have John McClane and to tie it into the franchise.
Gotcha. I mean, I guess it's sort of informally known as a good day to kill the franchise.
Speaking of Moscow, what's the Sean Connery film with the Moscow theme, Henrik? You must. Yeah, I think maybe Ali Pitts has already covered it in the podcast. I'm not sure. What's
No,
this?
not
Most likely
yet.
it's Sankari vai Vakoja. It's the Le Carre filmatization.
The Russia House.
That's the
Yeah,
one. Yes,
precisely.
Yeah, haven't seen
Yes.
it. Sounds interesting.
I saw it maybe like 4 or 5 years ago. It's not bad. It's definitely on the list to cover maybe at some point, but I suspect I'll be getting to Hunt to Red October much sooner in terms of Connery being involved in a Russia movie.
It kind of depends on your taste, like what you want from a Connery spy flick. If you want more adventurous, more actiony experience, like for example something that still would have an essence of James Bond in it, then I would say that Hunt for the Red October is a better pick, because there is more things that happen. Russia House, as far as I remember, much like basically everything that is based on Le Carre's books, it's very slow. It's a film where nothing major really happens, or does happen, but major things usually are just a handful of people in a room discussing about something really important.
Yeah, and there's like a subtext that like unless somebody does something now, bad things could happen. Subtext.
Yeah, like for example, Tinker Tailor, which is one of the most celebrated Le Carre filmatizations
Yes.
from the recent years. From the
Yeah, it's like 10 years ago. That makes me feel so old.
is it that old? Jesus
I
Christ!
think it is. I think it is about 10 years old.
Yeah, but still, extremely celebrated adaptation, and that film, I would say 60% of that film is just people going through different types of folders and trying to get their hands on folders.
Yeah. And just in very brown 70s rooms and just people
Oh,
smoking a hell of a lot of cigarettes.
I'm
Yep.
allergic to brown rooms. Henrik can testify. Well, switching gears completely.
Indeed.
Ali, how did you come up to create this your podcast?
Well, so I guested on a show called Classic Schmassic about 4 years ago, which had basically the same formula of like having a pre-film and then post-film discussion. Like the concept is that like supposedly one or other or both of the people on the podcast won't have seen the film before we watch it. We have a pre-chat about what we're going to watch, then we go away, watch the film, come back and discuss what we thought. So I just like ripped that whole format and just went, I'm going to use this except to talk about famous Russian and Soviet films, and then also occasionally films that are on a Russian theme, like either an adaptation of a Russian novel or something about Russian history that's done by either Hollywood or something else. I think so far it's only been Hollywood, but there's other things out there that are on the list to cover. So that's essentially the story of my podcast, is just rampant thievery of other people's ideas. But you know, talent borrows, etc., etc. I've had several returning guests, and when it's a returning guest, it's usually like a kind of 5-10 minute, hey, how are things going? What's the movie we're going to watch? Let's go.
Yeah.
Whereas when I have a new guest, especially if they have a particular connection with the subject matter of the film, or they've got an interesting like Russia related story, it'll be a longer episode. So yeah, we kind of vary anything between like sort of like 45-minute episode and some coming up towards being like an hour and a half, an hour and 45. Except we just released an episode that was like 3 hours because I got really carried away. But yeah, research, yeah, it varies on like how busy I am with other things and how lazy or not I'm feeling. So yeah, results may vary. I'm not as diligent as you guys.
Well, I was just about to say, Henrik, that 45 minutes episode length sounds about right. We can just cut you off the air at the 45-minute mark and be done with it.
Yeah, hard stop.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting how the power dynamics are going to work here tonight because we have two actual hosts of the show here now. I'm basically the guy who's kind of leading the whole thing and moving it forward, and while Henrik is just the slave. Oh no, I'm just kidding.
Dark. I was gonna say he's the Flavor Flav to your Chuck D.
I would love to, by the way, see if you would cover the unknown soldier in your podcast, because it's kind of Russia related, maybe too much Finnish related, but maybe the perspective, or perhaps actually the lack of perspective, that you don't get really anything about the Russian perspective or how they were in the war, how that makes you feel.
Sorry, I haven't caught that episode yet, but I'm guessing that's about the I guess it's called the Winter War in
There's the Winter War, but this movie is based on the continuation war.
Oh, okay,
which came
gotcha.
after the Winter War.
Right.
And this is kind of the Bible of Finland, as we discussed in the last episode about it. And we have made 3 goddamn movie adaptations about this book. So
Gotcha. Yeah. I mean, you guys have got a lot to answer for in the sense that you put up much more of a fight than the Red Army was expecting, and so that kind of, I mean, I don't know how accurate this is, but the story goes that that Hitler was like, oh, if the Finns are kicking the Red Army's ass, then imagine what we could do to them, because there's a lot more of us than there are Finns. So let's go. Yeah.
Siege of Stalingrad essentially was Finland's fall. That's the reading I'm getting here.
Oh yeah, that's what everyone in Britain thinks is like, yeah. It's a regular topic of conversation. It's like, how's the weather? Oh yeah, World War II is indirectly Finland's fault. It's nothing to do with the fact that like we said to Hitler, stop taking land off people. If you go into Czechoslovakia, there'll be big problems. Oh, you went into Czechoslovakia? We don't really feel like fighting you, so I guess it's okay. Please don't do it again, though. Oh no, you've just done it again.
Yeah, Henrik, like I told you, the Finnish role in the parts of Second World War is much bigger than you give it credit for. But there is a lot to be said about our different perspectives of how much actually Finland won in those wars.
Am I right in saying that it was the Winter War that the Molotov cocktail was invented, supposedly, or at least gained the name?
This is largely a guess from my end that it would have been winter.
It's a wonderfully sarcastic naming invention from the
Yeah.
Finns. Tells something about the Finns.
Yes. So I guess having a dark sense of humor is something that you share with the Russians.
I suppose, yeah. All right. So why is Ali actually in this podcast episode to talk about tonight's film? What's your connection to this film, actually?
Well, it's a Russian film. I mean, technically, a Soviet film, and it's one that I really, really, really enjoy. Like, I covered it for my podcast, and I really think that more people should see it. It's by Elem Klimov, who is way more famous in the West for directing Come and See, and this is his first film, and it's like there's a similar level of like expertise to the like. You can see his talent as a director, but tonally it's so different. So I kind of want to be flying the flag for like, hey, this guy, it wasn't just a fluke that Come and See was great. He was just a really good director. And also this doesn't make you want to just like go into the fetal position and cry about how horrible humanity is. So yeah, I kind of wanted to like champion this film. But anyway, yeah, how did you guys get on with it? I mean, I'm probably like jumping the gun slightly, but
Well, for me, it was my first time of seeing the film, and I was absolutely stunned, shocked when I heard that it's his first film.
okay, yeah. It is like remarkably accomplished.
Yeah, yeah. Do you want to tell our listeners where you're actually located?
So yeah, I'm in the UK. I live in a town called Milton Keynes, which if you don't live in the UK, you probably won't have heard of because it's kind of a nondescript commuter town that's like about 45 minutes on the train from London. So, but I did live in Moscow for 5 years in my late 20s. So that's kind of my Russia connection.
How did you end up in Russia, actually?
So I graduated a couple of years before the financial crisis, and I really didn't have like a strong idea of what I wanted to do career-wise. And back when I went to university, the attitude was very much like, oh, just get a degree in anything, and as long as you go to a half decent university, you'll be fine. There's a ton of jobs. The economy is doing great. So yeah, I didn't have like a really strong focus on what I wanted to do after I graduated. I had a notion that I wanted to teach. I tried that out. Like I was a teaching assistant for about a year, and I decided I just did not want to be stuck permanently with teenagers or kids the rest of my professional life. So, but that did kind of lead me on to the idea of teaching English as a foreign language. So I got my qualification in that. I was in my early-ish 20s, and I just thought I want to spend a bit more time not in the UK. I'd done a 3-month exchange program to Denmark during my university years, so it was like, I would like to see more of the world, but I also want to like not accumulate massive amounts of debt by just backpacking. So I thought I will teach English as a foreign language because then I can be working and kind of paying my way and just having a bit more of a like a normal experience. At least that was my notion at the time. So yeah, like getting the English teaching qualification allowed me to be able to move somewhere. And I kind of thought that I would be doing like a year or two in Russia and then moving on, but that's sort of not how things went. I ended up staying longer as that's where I met my wife. So who isn't Russian? She's American, but was like also based in Russia at the time. So it just made more sense for us to stay where we were because we had, friends and jobs there. So yeah, we ended up sticking there for another like 3 years, and then we ended up coming back to the UK. So yeah, that's my background and my Russia connection. It's weird actually. It's now over 5 years since I left, but it doesn't feel that long ago.
Yeah, the bug stayed with you, and this was Moscow?
It was,
Yeah.
yes. Traveled a little bit around Russia, like just the odd vacation slash holiday. This is the other thing about being married to an American. Like my version of English is totally broken. Like I never know whether to go with my like native variation or whether to kind of like switch to the American version so I'm better understood in certain parts of the world.
Oh my
um,
God. Yeah. Some of our closer listeners may have noticed that little trick that I pulled on the Berat episode. I felt that at that point that I'm kind of done with the American-ish accent that I'm pulling here, and I tried to do the British accent out of the blue. I don't know how that worked. That was quite broken as well. But I have some weird gravitation towards the English accent.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. In Russia, they are, as a general rule, this is obviously a massive generalization, but they certainly, I experienced that like British English is kind of like has a more privileged status than American English. Like, I don't know how much of that is just like sort of ill feeling like towards America because the simplistic version is that America beat them in the Cold War, so they're a bit sore about that. But yeah, there does seem to be like this stereotypical attitude among some Russians that's like, well, British English is the proper version, and like the American English is some kind of like illegitimate stepchild. But I'm just like, no, that's not true at all. Then again, there's lots of British people who have that attitude as well. It's just, yeah, it's kind of silly, really. But yeah, there is this like, well, this is the proper version, and this is. It's like, no, it's like when you're separated by, a big distance and like political independence, then of course things are going to develop along slightly different lines, and it's just like, well, it's not a question of better, it's just different. Anyway, public service announcement over.
By the way, do you have been scouts or have you been at some kind of camps before? And what are your experiences of camping with maybe some group or I don't know, alone?
So I was never in the scouts per se, but there was like church camps that I went to for years and years in my like preteens and teens. So yeah, there definitely is a sort of I guess a kind of nostalgia attached to this film in a weird way, although it's obviously a very, very different context. But yeah, so I do have a little bit of a experience of spending the ones I would go to would be a week at a time, so it was like literally like 6 days, I think. But yeah, oh my goodness, that's so long ago. But yeah, how about you guys? Did you have any kind of equivalent of this?
I have some bits and pieces of memories because I was a scout early on, but the most of the time we didn't even do any scouting really. We were more at the kind of our office eating popcorn than doing the actual scouting, so it was kind of weird. But I do remember some funny stuff, like especially funny, like people teasing me at the camp, and some dude was on top of a really high tree and pissing from that tree on top of everyone else, and apparently that
Oh
was really
no.
funny.
Yeah,
So
that does sound like something that would happen with like preteen slash teen
eh,
boys.
yeah,
Uh,
10 or something, 11, 12.
yeah, it's funny. Like these days, I am very, very not outdoorsy. So the idea of spending like a whole week under canvas just sort of horrifies me. But yeah, apparently I was a bit more robust when I was younger.
What about Henrik?
Well, yeah and no. Like we don't have anything like this exactly in Finland.
Yep.
What this is like the camp of the film, what it's most its closest resemblance in Finland would be like Kari already said. It would be the scout camps, but even though they in practical sense they are kind of similar to the camp of the film, they don't really have this aspect that you have to do it, you have to go to the camp, and it's a huge deal that you go through it, and there is no this type of maternity aspect to the
Yeah, yeah,
Finnish
yeah.
scout camping. On that sense, what I would say it's closest to in Finnish scene would be a confirmation camp,
Okay.
which is
Mm,
extremely Christian institution at least for us.
yeah. Did you
But
go? Did you go to this confirmation?
Yeah, I mean
what?
mine was a like it was a Christian camp, but it wasn't
Okay.
connected necessarily with confirmation, as that's kind of like this was more of a like I guess sort of different denomination from the Church of England, so they have like different things about like they
Mm,
don't have confirmation in quite the same sense, but yeah. so it wasn't quite so connected with that. But yeah, anyway.
I I went through the confirmation camp period when I was a teenager. Well, in Finland, it pretty much is. Like, you reach a certain age, and then it's expected of you that you really go through it. It's a whole phase. I know where you were alluding to with period.
No, I don't know what you're alluding me to here, but for my part, I was kind of the young rebel, and my father was trying to coax me to go to this camp, offered me 1,000 marks as a payment after it, and I still said no, thank you.
Gotcha.
Never went.
You just should have taken the money. To be absolutely honest, like.
The idealism of youth. I cannot be bought.
Yeah. All right. So I guess this is the kind of film podcast where I'm the authoritative Dinin and Henrik is the Inochkin, but I will dig up Henrik here every week to stage perform for everyone's pleasure. Why did we choose this film now? Henrik?
Bro, beats me really.
Yeah, because you asked me to make two suggestions, or you asked me for suggestions, and I suggested this one or another one, and this is the one that, like, you decided that you would prefer out of the two options I gave you.
Yeah. Essentially, we landed on this film just to coax you to guest on our podcast. We are pretty familiar with the director's commentary, as already stated. So on that regard, this was also, there was a certain amount of interest from me and Karri to also check out a film from the director that is tonally completely different.
Yeah, this choice is not my fault this time, Henrik, so we can blame only our guest, as any self-respecting podcast should do.
I mean, why have a guest if you're not going to pin things on them?
Right? Finnish mentality. And I believe for Henrik and me, this is the first time seeing this film.
Yup.
Yeah.
Yup.
Yeah.
I think this was the third or fourth time I'd seen it, but...
A little overview of the film. It's worldwide known as Welcome or No Trespassing, and in the UK known as No Holiday for Inochkin, and in Russia known as... Ali, can you help me out here?
Okay, yeah, so it's Добро, пожаловать или посторонним вход воспрещен. Which, if you're going to be like super literal about it, is something like welcome or entry is forbidden to outsiders. Right.
Very long title.
Yes.
I really can't stand the romanization of Russian because it doesn't make any sense for me. Like, for example, this VKHOD, and it's still vhod.
Yeah. Anytime you see a transliteration of Russian that's KH, it's more like a huh.
Yeah.
It's like a huh in English, but more of a it's like a huh.
Yeah, it's
going on.
Polish, I think it's the same sound, but it's written as CH, so I get a little bit confused.
Yeah, I must say I've dabbled with Polish on Duolingo, like the language learning app, and I find just like understanding how, you know, combinations of Latin letters equal these sounds, I just find it very hard to get my head around. And the fact that you've got all of like these different like diacritics and like marks that mean different things, and it's like, learning a whole new alphabet was easier than this.
Yeah, I think you get used to it, but it can look like nonsense first, for sure.
Yeah, because just like letter combinations don't mean the same thing. Like when you're used to like ch meaning ch in English, and it's something else. It's like, this is confusing. My poor brain.
In case you haven't seen this film, dear listener, I suggest that you first watch the film and then come back. But it's a satirical comedy about the excessive restrictions that children face during the vacation in a young pioneer camp, as per Wikipedia, because I'm pretty lazy today.
There may or may not be a subtext about the camp standing in for the Soviet Union. I've never seen officially explained as being that, but I definitely think that the subtext is that the camp is a metaphor for the country.
I think in very many ways and pretty obvious ways. And if you have seen also what's the nice little dentist movie from this guy as well?
Yeah, I've never actually seen it, but I've heard that has quite a satirical edge as well. I forget the title.
The Adventures of a Dentist.
Oh, that's right.
Adventures of a Dentist. Yeah. I didn't think that it was that interesting, but similar themes.
Gotcha.
And this film, Welcome or No Trespassers, was completed in the summer of 1964. Received a heavy, or at least opposition from the state side when they started to realize what might be going on here. And,
there's a story that I think it was the director's brother told that during the filming process they got a telegram from the authorities. I think it was the it was Goskino, the state cinema agency or state film agency, basically saying, you need to stop production on this now. And the director just hid it on his desk and said, let's just pretend we didn't get that, and let's just carry on with the shoot. So they had to really rush to finish it. But yeah, it's funny that doesn't really come across in a final product. But yeah, I'm not surprised this had problems with the censors, but yeah.
Yeah, there's a bit of a different versions of how things went, and it's really hard to find any English written material regarding the background research here, but I also heard a version where it said that Elem Klimov actually tore the paper, the telegram apart, and then just proceeded to go on with it. And it seemed like this was also the case with the release. They would have gotten already some kind of green light, but then the film, somebody saw it and they said that no, we're not going to push this out, and then he hurried to rush it out on some cinemas.
Yeah, I mean, judging by Kinopoisk, which is essentially the Russian equivalent of IMDb, that said that it was seen by something like 13 million viewers. So it eventually got quite a wide release, if that's correct. But yeah, apparently wasn't the smoothest process of getting it released.
Yeah, and also different versions about what the party leader Khrushchev or
Khrushchev, technically.
Yeah, there was a version that said that he was opposed to the film, and then there's a version that he actually said something akin to, "Why are you holding this film? Let it go. This is funny."
Yeah. Apparently, one of the problems that censors had with it, this was in the Russian Wikipedia article, so take with a pinch of salt, but supposedly that the imaginary funeral scene, which we'll get onto, so this will make no sense, but the imaginary funeral scene, a picture of the deceased was thought to look far too much like Khrushchev, so apparently the censors didn't like that. But I mean, it's still in the film, so apparently they relented. But yeah, apparently that wasn't something that they were a fan of.
Yeah, well, I think it's kind of pushing it that somebody was saying that the grandmother would be kind of a parallel to Khrushchev. But
I mean, I can kind of see it, but there's a certain amount of like, you know, just sort of elderly and carrying a couple of extra pounds, and that's about where the resemblance ends.
but I'm kind of surprised that this indeed went past the censors. There is this talk that there were so many movies at that point to go through that some of it was just impossible to go through all of them.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I kind of get the impression that sometimes they're just like as long as it wasn't like super overtly
Yeah,
criticizing the party or communism, then they'd kind of let things go, especially in this era, because this was still in the time of the Khrushchev thaw, so they were a little bit more relaxed about censorship, and things got a bit more strict when he was replaced by Brezhnev. It's not quite that simple, but in general, things were slightly less strict when he was in charge.
yeah,
A
I
bit more.
understand that he actually had some sense of humor too, that he could see these scenes where he is being kind of made fun of at the end and just play along with it. Seems like it.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think there's different versions. I mean, certainly if you've seen the Death of Stalin, there's the notion that he himself was a bit of a joker and liked and that his sense of humor was an important aspect of his personality, and how he even survived. But again, might take that with a pinch of salt. But
Yeah, there is this whole story how this kind of a corn crusade of Khrushchev, he tried to make the corn kind of solve all the problems that Stalin apparently had during those times to feed his nation. So this
mm,
the whole story with corn started, but it didn't really then work out, and in a very awkward manner, all things considered, this project didn't work out. And I heard that he was doing pretty well in Russia with the whole corn project, but then the cultivation was stupid because it was being cultivated in regions where it couldn't grow anyway. Things
yeah,
like that.
I think what I've heard about it is that it might have worked, but because they didn't really like properly know what they were doing, they didn't take some precautionary measures to prevent soil erosion, and apparently because they didn't do this proper preparation, it meant that you just the soil gave way, and then the land was kind of unusable. So yeah, basically like it was a massive disaster. um
Yeah, this whole corn thing is the most clear or clearest at the end when Inochkin comes out of the kind of the corn capsule, if you will.
yes, yeah, there's the whole business with the corn queen.
Yeah.
um
So Klimov, I think we already kind of mentioned it, but he's mostly known in or worldwide for his film Come and See, It Is Smotry, but this might be even more known inside Russia.
yes, I think it's certainly more popular. I mean, I can't imagine why. The fact that it's like not incredibly depressing might be something to do with it. But yeah, like there was like again, Kinopoisk, the Russian film site. This apparently was ranked as like the 20th most popular like Russian or Soviet movie. So it's kind of like it's up there in terms of like national favorites. And apparently on that list you've got no Tarkovsky because it's just a bit too like arty and slow. And Come and See is again not on that list because yeah, it might be a great movie. Is it a favorite movie? I mean, no.
Yeah.
It has to be. You have to have a very particular personality for that to be. a favorite that you come back to again and again. What should we watch this Friday evening? Oh, just throw Come and See on. That'll be a laugh.
Yeah. Great family film for all the kids.
Indeed, yes.
But this film actually is kind of something that it goes for the whole family, I would believe. And
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I mean, I think there's a mixture of like the visual and kind of slapstick comedy, but as we've already said, there's this kind of like satirical undertone that means it's enjoyable for older folks as well.
yeah, I believe the idea was to mainly target it for adult audiences because of these messages, like I suppose. But I don't know. I think it works for everybody.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons it might have eventually got approved by the censors is that they just didn't take it seriously as a satire, or they just didn't view it as that. They just thought of it as being like this kind of fun, goofy kids movie.
Yeah.
Well, it is, at least in my opinion, like the core of the film. The surface level of the film is pretty kid friendly. It's quite fantastical in many scenes and in many ways. And when it comes to the political satire, it's very much below or it's very much in the subtext, and it's in the little details where you have to be more or less familiar with the subject and where the film is hinting at to really even pick up on the whole satire thing.
Yeah, and I wonder whether this has contributed to its kind of relative obscurity outside of Russia. Is that, the whole thing about jokes not necessarily translating or jokes not being funny if you have to explain them. It's almost like if you have to say this is funny because, then it ceases to be funny. So I think that's perhaps part of it. But I think there's enough visual humor in this that it should be able to be enjoyed on that level. But also it's a 50-year-old black and white movie, so just like superficially that doesn't sound like necessarily everyone's cup of tea. So
Yeah, I quite enjoyed the very imaginative kind of the imagination what we see of Inochkin thinking of these adult characters in funny situations when he hears some kind of a word or phrase.
yeah.
Those are pretty hilarious.
Yes, I don't want to give away my favorite scene, but just yet. But yes.
Yeah, there's quite a lot that I could see as some kind of a criticism of the state. There is the Dunin, the administrator who follows the camp rules to the T, and because he believes not following the rules will lead to accidents. So Dunin is somebody from the state or simply representing the state itself.
Oh yeah, very very much so. He is kind of like the stand-in for like government officials everywhere. This kind of paternalistic, we know what's best for you. No, don't think for yourself. That's just going to cause trouble.
Yeah. And
just follow the rules and everything will be fine.
But even with that, it's pretty actually warm and accepting presentation of the government. Like you mentioned, he is mostly a paternal figure, and he is someone who doesn't really mean ill to anyone. Even I would actually go as far as to say that to a certain point he is actually quite correct in his view that you shouldn't really depart too far from following the rules, since the rules are kind of tested and true, and if you stick by the rules, you kind of eliminate the chance of harm.
Yes, yeah, it's very, very, very risk averse. But yeah, I'm glad that you said that, Henrik, because it is interesting that he, as you say, he is not presented as a villain. He's kind of like he's Inichkin's kind of antagonist, but he's not doing things to be horrible. He's just super convinced that he knows what's best, which the film possibly doesn't agree with, but he's not regarded as a horrible figure. And I compare this, say, with like John Hughes movies, where like often adult authority figures are just kind of horrible and basically just a bit dickish. And he's Deanin is not presented that way at all. He's just like silly rather than like malevolent.
Yeah, and you stating that he works as an antagonist of the film, which he does. He is the main source of conflict, at least from the perspective of Inochkin.
Yeah.
He is something that Inochkin has to find a way to get around, and well, for the majority of the film to hide himself from. But it's a bit between Junin and Inochkin. It's not so much a conflict on a personal level as it's kind of what they both present. Inochkin is the conflict of the film strongly is individualism versus the government-driven rules,
Yeah,
or the institutionalism.
Dune being
Yeah.
kind of the tool of the state, maybe not really anything more or less.
Yeah. There is one scene though where you see Deanin's like paranoia. Like he's talking to Valia, who's one of like the junior leaders of the camp, and he says, "You've just got one Inochkin to worry about. I've got like I forget exactly how many he says, but like hundreds."
Yeah.
And the idea is that he sees every all of the kids as like a potential Inochkin like rebel, and he's just really worried about that. And it's a theme that they kind of return to again and again.
Then again, he isn't completely wrong with that. I mean, the film with Inochkin, it starts when Dunin is going through all the past grievances that Inochkin has caused. And in
Yes.
all of those instances, the grievance has been that Inochkin has started to do something. He started to fence with sticks, and he started to read books under his bed sheets. And essentially, once Inochkin started to do that, everybody started to copy him. So there is kind of this. Essentially, every kid has the capability and the possibility to be Inochkin.
Yes, but he's particularly worried about people like Inichkin setting a bad example and then everyone, getting ideas in their head. Yeah.
Yeah, this kind of rebel movement starts to build up.
And that's what happens in the film. Like once Inochkin has to sneak back into the camp, basically like the entire group 3, as they are being referred in the film, they, at least the boys, they all start to have ideas in their head, which, well, some of them are even dangerous, and some of them are conspiracies in their nature.
Yeah, it's like the situation with Inochkin is like the catalyst for them kind of like quote unquote misbehaving. That is doing things that Dean and the rest of the like camp leadership wouldn't approve of. It's like, yeah, because Inochkin is around, they're stepping out of line.
I paid attention to how shocking it is that everybody is on board to hide Inochkin from the very first moment when you see him collecting all the food under the tables for himself and all that.
Yeah, he does quite well out of it. Like as you see that bowl being passed around, it's like he's probably getting more than everyone else is, just because like if you get one like bit of food from everyone, it adds up as to more than like an individual serving.
But still, there is this. Well, I don't know how fair it is to say, but this, let's say, local babushka who is actually a kid. This kind of an informer who just appears everywhere.
Yes,
Something is being done wrong. Let's report.
Yeah. The snitch.
Yeah.
There are there are two. Well, I don't know if this is the correct term to use, but running gag characters in the film. The first one is the snitch, and then there is the young boy who has the shirt with the number 13 on
Yeah.
it. And the running gag with him is that he constantly appears in different situations asking what is going on, and everybody just tell him to fuck off.
Yes.
I wonder what was actually the real point here. Was it just supposed to be funny on its own like that, or there's something behind it? I don't know.
Yeah, I didn't know what the subtext was of that, whether he's like, because I get the impression, I don't know whether it's just his size, but he seems to be, I don't know whether he's meant to be one of the junior leaders himself, but he definitely seems like slightly older than the kids that he's constantly going up to and saying like, what's going on here?
Yeah.
So
But it is kind of funny on its own because he always manages to pop up when something extremely weird is happening.
yeah, and he just has like, it's brilliant casting because they managed to pick a kid who just has a really kind of like dopey expression on his face and something about his voice that's
Yeah.
just kind of, what's going on?
And yeah, Inochkin breaks the cardinal rules here and leaves the camp area to the island in the beginning of the movie. And
Yes.
I suppose this is a correct translation. Let's assume that it is. This word defected happens here.
Yeah, I actually have my doubts about that because the Russian word that they use is just says he left, he went out. So my Russian isn't quite good enough to know whether that has the subtext of defecting, but yeah. So I thought that was maybe a slightly like over interpreted translation, but I would have to defer to Russian listeners whether that
Okay.
word would have that subtext. But I did think that was a very funny translation.
And interestingly, the kids who defected to this island, they take their pants off, and I suppose this is some kind of analogous to being free from the rules put on them.
Yeah, definitely. In that regard, Inochkin is something like a Soviet like proto Bart Simpson in that he's the first time we see him he's like waggling his butt at the screen.
Yeah, this, as you were pointing it out so nicely in your episode, it must be the first introduction of a character that I've seen where we first see the character's butt.
Yeah, that yes, I imagine there's probably other films where that's true, but yeah, it's definitely unconventional.
Yeah.
And certainly unusual in a children's film. There's quite a lot of nudity in this movie, considering that it's a kids' film.
Then again, I think the Russians seem to have a little bit more relaxed way of depicting, well, at least the children in this way.
Yes, certainly if you compare it to like British or American attitudes, like Andrei Tarkovsky's Ivan's Childhood. Ivan has his kit off for a scene, which again is you're quite surprised to see that much in a film, at least compared to like what would be usual for like British or American cinema.
Yeah. So Inochkin returns to the camp. I didn't find any analogy here, but this is just the beginning of the gleeful part where the whole breaking of rules goes into absurdity.
Yes, yeah. So he hides out under like the rostrum, as there's like a space under there, so he can just like hang out under there and like evade the leadership of the camp.
Yeah. Children are masters of the pioneer camp. And doesn't exactly happen. This is the institution model.
It's kind of funny because that's the official slogan of the camp, and we know that it's actually like from the point of view of the camp leadership, it's super disingenuous because it's really not that way at all. But actually, in reality, the kids are basically like de facto in charge because Dinin is so clueless that all of this stuff is going on behind his back and he's not aware of it.
I found something about the final scene as well that where they are flying over the river, they were apparently hung on a thin rope to the dome of the Mosfilm pavilion, and
Oh, really?
for safety measures, there were also some two more steel threads applied, and which dug into the body so much that the boys even tried to refuse to shoot the scene, but it happened.
Oof. Gotcha. So I mean, not quite as bad as like firing live rounds over the heads of I've forgotten the name of the actor in Come and See, but still,
Yeah, my God.
questionable from a health and safety point of view.
I'm pretty sure that Babushka wasn't attached to anything.
No.
You could see that she's slightly, positioned in a way that probably not, yeah.
Yes. Yeah, that's one of the less kind of good from a technical point of view, but it's kind of like, because it's a fantastical scene, I kind of give it a pass.
Actually, I thought that the way that they were lit and everything, I think it was pretty much as good as you can get with the back projection stuff. Not too bad.
Yeah, but I mean, in terms of like stuff in the film that makes you think, oh yeah, I'm watching a 50-plus-year-old film, apart from the fact it's in black and white, of course, as that tends to be a bit more common back then. But yeah, generally it's just a very it's a very stylish film visually, which is kind of unusual for a comedy. I mean, maybe a Wes Anderson comedy, but like a more sort of Common and Garden like comedy, like that amount of attention generally isn't given to the visuals. I don't know, like Edgar Wright as well is very much like about everything in the frame being perfect, but it's, if you're talking about something like, I don't know, the Hangover movies, then I don't think they kind of display that level of attention to detail, let's say. Maybe I'm being unfair, I don't know.
Yeah, it's not perfect, but yeah, it goes with the whole fantasy aspect pretty well. And what do you think the ending kind of means, if anything? It's just being free.
Yeah, I think so. I don't have like a grandiose theory. I think it's just celebrating being able to do your own thing a bit more. But like I'm not quite sure what the reading of the situation with Deanan is, whether he's fired or whether it's more just he kind of has like a semi nervous breakdown and just decides he's had enough.
Yeah, and what indeed happens there? Like, I'm not even sure if Dunin sees Inochkin on top of this structure, or he is just confused a bit of what's going on.
Yeah, I think what happens is the Mitrofanov, who is the important official whose niece is at the camp, just gets a bit fed up with having to watch the very, very stilted, pre-planned like ceremony event that or like production that he's having to watch, and just tells the kids and everyone who's at the parents' day, let's just go off to the beach. It's a nice day, and so that's what everyone does. And Deanan's plans of this like perfectly orchestrated event are just like dashed to pieces.
I gotta say, I also loved the way that they were preparing for this whole Parents' Day, where kind of the assistants trying to set up everything and do the training rehearsals. They seem to be really pissed off. At least this one guy sometimes really just explodes. Like, yeah, okay, whatever.
Yeah. And there's also the bit where they're wanting to do something that's kind of different from the standard approved program. They want to do like a an adaptation of a Mayakovsky poem, and Mayakovsky was a poet who was I forget when he died. I think it was the early 30s. A supposed suicide that's kind of like regarded as really quite suspicious, but he was very much a poet who was about freedom and like smashing the old order kind of thing. So even though he was very pro-Soviet, he was also regarded as being super subversive. So so that's why Dinan is kind of like, yeah, maybe we shouldn't do a poem by this guy. And also the poem mentions Adam and Eve, so he's a bit like, yeah, we don't want that kind of religious stuff, as that's like not Soviet. So yeah, let's not do this guy's work. Let's just stick with the pre-approved program that everyone is happy with.
I also found this, I'm not sure how valid this is, but it seemed that when these kids were involved with the production, there were some days, or rather a night, when they went to play outside, in secret, went out of their room's window. They went to play, and they took some flashlights. They played war, and then next morning these kids would all be very lethargic, and they would notice that some of the flashlights of the production had just disappeared. So they looked into it, and one of the adults then noticed one of those kids outside doing this. That kind of
Yeah,
thing. Yeah, I was
I
talking about
think.
the actual actors that they would do this in real life.
Oh, really? Right. Gotcha. Yeah. So kind of life imitating art.
Kinda, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm just imagining a scenario where the film doesn't get made because the kids who are supposed to be the actors are just like too rebellious. That would be pretty ironic.
Henrik, any crazy theories about the ending or the movie in general? Something like James Bond is a communist.
Well, I think that everybody in the film is a communist. I I have a slight feeling like you can call that a hunch.
Okay, good enough.
A radical notion.
You had this Russian guest, Tanya Lukyanova, in your podcast, Ali, and I believe he
Yes.
studied filmmaking, and he was quite resourceful about Russian films and this film.
Yes, yeah. So yeah, she's Russian. She grew up in Moscow, but now lives in the States. So she kind of has that sort of, she kind of like knows the kind of Russian classics from her childhood. I think her family were involved in the film industry, but yeah, she kind of has the benefit of like both kind of perspectives, having had like the Western film education on top of like that like Russian base. Um, yeah.
Yeah, very nice. And could kind of quote the movie at any point and grew up with it. That kind of film.
Yes. Yeah, I think she'd seen it like goodness knows how many times, but it was such a favorite that she had no problem like revisiting it for the episode I did. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was it was definitely an episode because I haven't had too many Russian guests on my show, but
Oh.
it was definitely an episode which particularly benefited from having somebody who was very familiar with the movie.
Yeah, I noticed that at least you have had visitors, I believe, from ex-Soviet countries. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, yeah. We had my friend from my Moscow days, Ina, who she's now living in the States as well. But yeah, her family, or one side of her family is from Uzbekistan. So yes, like part of the former Soviet Union, but like very much its own thing and different from Russia as well. So that's nice getting the perspective of people who kind of like have an insight into the Russian speaking world, but don't have like the totally same perspective on it.
Right.
Um, Yeah, I'd be curious to know what she thought of Welcome or No Trespassing, but I've never asked.
Yeah, yeah, great podcast. Everybody who's listening, let's go to check out Russophiles Unite movie podcast. And of course, we will provide some links and everything later on. But
Awesome, thank you.
yeah, there are, of course, locations where this film was shot. They might not say a hell of a lot for people listening to this podcast unless you're Russian. But this town called Tuapse has been floating around, where at least there was a central committee of Komsomols camp, pioneer camp, and then there was one around Tula region in a town called Bor. And in total, it seems that there were 3 summer camps used for the film, at least according to the information that I gathered, around the period of 4.5 months that this was filmed. So one of these locations is outside of Moscow. Not sure if it's really a suburb, but like a drivable distance, let's say.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's one of those sort of movie magic things. It never occurred to me that it was multiple different places. Like they do such a good job of making it seem like seamless, like it's just one place.
I'm resisting the urge to say something about Soviet architecture and how it might look similar.
Well, indeed, there's a whole movie about that satirizes that. I don't know if you've come across The Irony of Fate, where the whole plot revolves around Soviet architecture being very similar from place to place. But if you haven't, it's a fun movie. It's very long, but it's definitely worth a look.
Yeah, okay, I'd love to see it.
Yeah, it's a Christmas movie. Oh, wait, well, I mean, it's not a Christmas movie because Christmas isn't a thing in the Soviet Union. It's a New Year's movie, so it typically gets shown every single year on the 31st of December, as that's when the plot is set as well.
All right.
Yeah, it's much, 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 much better than Yolki, which you've covered on this show. I mean, Yolki's kind of fun, but yeah, Ironia Sudbui, The Irony of Fate, is much more of a classic, I would say.
Yeah, I believe I found your podcast by searching on my podcast application on Android for other podcasts that have covered Yolki. Or was it like that you connected first and said that, oh, somebody else is also covering Yolki? I think it was that way.
It might have been. I think it might have been like I was curious to see whether anyone else had covered that movie on their show. I think that's how I stumbled across you guys. Yeah, that was a few years ago now.
Yeah. Okay, those crazy Finns did it. Yeah. Yeah, this director has indeed done some crazy tonal switches. Like this is a children's or this the kind of a family type of movie, and then there is this Come and See, and I very much recommend that you watch it at least once in your lifetime. And this is a director that didn't do quite that many films, and he was really selective about his films and perhaps a bit authoritative when selecting his projects.
Yeah, I think he also just ran into, like many directors, just ran into a lot of censorship problems. Like his film Agony, which I haven't seen yet, which is mostly focuses on Rasputin and his relationship with the last Tsar, was made, I think, in the early to mid 70s and didn't see the light of day until like the early 80s. It was just, I think it was regarded to have been too sympathetic to the Romanovs, so it's just like, nope, no one's seeing that. And then they eventually relented. But yeah, I think he had problems with the censors for.
Yeah, I also stumbled on an article that said that the Tovarish Tunin, played by however you pronounce that, Evgeny Evstigniev.
Yeah. It's Yevgeny Yevstigniev. I think is the closest I'm going to get to it.
Yeah, thanks. Uh, was an actor that Klimov absolutely wanted for this project. And
Mm.
then the studio said that no, you're not going to have him. And then there was some kind of a back and forth. And then finally Klimov gave the ultimatum as in his like debut film, he told the studio that, well, either I'm going to have my Evgeny or you are going to do the film by yourself. So then they
Wow.
gave the green light.
Oh wow. Yeah, that I'd not heard that story, but that does sound from other things I've heard about Klimov. It does seem like he was like willing to put his foot down. Yeah. Actually this is I hadn't realized this, but he Yevstigniev was also in a film from the late 80s, which is an adaptation of Mikhail Bulgakov's very. I mean, it's not a short story; it's more like a very short novel called Heart of a Dog. But in that film, I mean, it was like from nearly 20 years later, but he was totally unrecognizable because the character is so different. So it was one of those ones where I watched the film and then I was kind of like, I wonder who was the because sometimes I don't really pay attention to the cast list as it's
Yeah.
coming up. I was just like, I wonder who the main actor was. I was like, really? That's Comrade Dinin? I did not recognize him. Because it's like such a different character. But yeah, I guess it's just you get used to certain actors playing many very similar roles, and that means that sometimes you can kind of underestimate other actors' range.
Yeah. Speaking of range, I think the actor of Inochkin is doing a pretty fantastic job here as well.
Yeah, I mean, generally, I find like the kids are all really good.
Yeah, they are. The director Klimov had some experience, at least in the later parts of his career, even more experience with working with kids, and seemed to know his way around this subject matter in Come and See already.
Yeah, I mean, it never feels like super forced, which is often the problem with child actors. Is it does feel very much like they're just reciting the things that they've been forced to memorize, and it's very stilted. But yeah, you don't get that sense with this at all.
And a special point about Anatoly Kuznetsov, who does the cinematography according to IMDb here. So thank you for your services. This was really a pleasure to watch. I think it's gorgeously shot through and
Oh
throughout.
yeah, it's such a fantastic looking movie. I was looking at his other film credits because I was kind of like, oh, what else has he done?
Yeah,
And I mean, he did do other stuff, but there was no names of films that really jumped out at me as being famous Russian or Soviet movies. So I'm still curious about the other things he did, but there's nothing that's like super famous. But yeah, it's incredible to look at. I mean, I really especially like the night shots.
mm-hmm.
Just like the lighting is it's so beautiful to look at.
Yeah, it is. Definitely bookmarking this guy to check out more. Henrik, would it be quickies at this point?
I guess it would.
All
We
right.
have already gone longer than the film itself actually runs. So.
Yes, yeah, we
Yeah,
should say it's a very slight runtime. It's like 70 odd minutes.
it is, and you definitely don't get tired watching. It's keeping a really nice pace. But what was your favorite performance? Maybe starting with Henrik.
um, from my end, and I'm none of the performances were bad, but my favorite was, and I'm gonna butcher the name completely, but Yevgeny Yevstigney, the dude who plays Deanin.
Yeah,
Yes, yeah, same here. Yeah, I'm also giving my vote to Yevstigniev. He's so good.
he's really good. Yeah, he has a lot of fun things to do here. So But if anything else, I would have to go with Viktor Kosich here.
Yes, yeah, he's if he wasn't good, then the whole film would fall flat. So he really carries it off in his like role as being the main kid.
Yeah, he has kind of this rather mature posture or way of playing. I don't know, maybe more so than the other kids. So that maybe why it works.
Yeah, it's interesting because I thought the actor was much younger than he actually was. I think he was 13 or 14 when this was shot, but I thought he was like 9 or 10. So maybe the fact that he was actually older than he looks like is part of like the conveying the sort of maturity, even if, you know, he obviously has his flights of fancy.
Yeah. All right. What was your favorite quote or line?
Well, mine also goes to Deanin to lay more weights to my argument that Deanin is not a bad guy and actually was meaning well throughout the film. But this is when the kids hide that plate full of meatballs into the magic box and it turns into a sparrow. And Deanin remarks, "You are pioneers and you torture the bird. This is wrong."
Yes, yeah, it does. It does show a like hitherto like not obvious like humanitarian slash humane aspect to the character. Yeah, he's concerned about this bird's welfare. Yeah, my favorite line, like, I don't feel like this is a film full of like catchy one-liners particularly, but I do enjoy the bit where he's like recounting all of Enochkin's like quote unquote crimes, and he says the thing about like, and Enochkin got a flashlight slash torch and was reading under the covers, and then everyone was reading, as if like reading itself is a bad activity. But it just tells you so much about Deanin's mentality that, like, you know, and other things that come up elsewhere in the film, where he's like criticizing Valia for like reading an author because she finds him funny. It's just so, you know, illustrative of his worldview.
I wonder if it was also kind of illustrative that, if you read too much, don't do that because you might just get to know too much about the Soviet system, you know.
Yeah, exactly. It's like curiosity is not something that we encourage here. Yeah. How about you, Carrie? What was your favorite line?
Well, there's this moment when one of the kids comes to that stage and the Inochkin is under this stage and they're having this like discussion there, and then he has drawn this one picture for the magazine about Inochkin.
Oh yeah.
and he tries to save the situation by saying, "I jumped into nettle for you." I thought that was poetic.
Yeah. And that scene is very much like you really feel like those kids' pain of having to jump into the nettles. It's very like, it makes my skin crawl every time.
Yeah. 3 adjectives to describe the film. Henrik.
Who's gonna start?
Henrik.
Mine are light, like tonally wise, visual, because at times this really is, and adventurous.
For me, nothing fancy this time, but very valid in my world. Gorgeous, funny, and creative.
Awesome. My 3 are playful, satirical, and energetic.
Very nice.
I don't know about you, but this didn't happen particularly the first time I watched it, but every subsequent time, just some of the music just has got stuck in my head.
Yeah.
I was annoying my wife earlier today by just going la 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 la. It's just like, I'm sorry, I can't help it.
You know, because I heard that and then all the variations of that, I was thinking that I'm going to do a disservice for everybody, for the listeners, and start the episode with the la 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 la. But I'm not that
you totally
cool.
should. You totally should. I mean, you make people watch Come and See as their Christmas movie. I don't think that's that you could be accused of like.
Touche.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dot.
Yes.
Would you recommend, Henrik?
Well,
Yeah.
I am not as passionate about the film as apparently the two of you.
Not again.
Yeah. I'm
Who could have seen this coming?
Once again.
Let me guess. You have seen this 1,000,000 times before.
And I have seen this 1,000,000 times before, but like previous time when we were dealing with Russian comedy, my biggest gripe back then and even now is that I just didn't find it that funny.
Yeah, it doesn't translate that well, I guess, all the time.
Like, to me, this is more, and I'm not saying that this is a bad film. I like this a hell of a lot more than our previous Russian comedy, but I related this film more to the kind of a period piece like children's adventure films. Like to give you guys some kind of type of reference from Sweden's end. I was thinking a hell of a lot of Emil or Pippi Longstocking. Both who are characters that I
Abhor?
more or less just can't stand. And to me, this had a hell of a lot of that same type of tone. It's kind of a children's adventure film, and there is some kind of a overblown like obstacle that they have to find a way around, and the way that they find it's partly well kids just manage to do it, and it's partly just like half-assedly fantastical as it is in this film where meatballs turns into pigeons and you name it. And I'm not saying that that's a bad thing really. Like I did like those fantastical elements within the film. I did like its adventurous spirit. And because of that, yeah, in the end, I am giving it a recommendation. Like I think that this is pretty solid. It's fast going. It's lighthearted, fun for the whole family type of deal. Your kids might get some nice adventure film vibes from this one. So on that regard, by all means, yeah, check it out. But my recommendation, it will be kind of a lukewarm, kind of a diet recommendation, because for me the satire didn't exactly work, and most of all, this still being labeled as a comedy. Well, I smirked a couple of times, but I really didn't laugh.
Okay, I found myself laughing in the first 5-10 minutes. And Henrik, at
And
least.
then you were dead serious. Yeah.
Well, no. But at least, Henrik, I don't really get that Pippi Longstrump or Pippi Longstocking Emil vibe, where in Pippi Longstocking there are some scenes in the series where Pippi Longstocking builds this makeshift airplane with her friends. And here it's something that it's coming from his imagination, whereas in Pippi it's actually happening.
Well, it is and it's not. Like, Pippi is way more upon her own ass when it comes to her adventures, where she just creates everything. But and on that regard, yeah, that's not what happens in this film. But this film also has like those Those type of moments are like, well, your main character is someone who manages to hide underneath the platform or inside of it for God knows how many days, needs one bathroom break, and when he needs that, it's extremely easy. The kids just, they pretend to be, what was it, ballet walking?
Yes, basically it's like a it's not a quartet, it's like a trio of musicians, and he basically just hides behind them as they walk, as they're playing. And Deanan is very impressed by their technical ability, the fact that they can walk and play at the same time when the only reason they're doing it is to hide this kid. So yeah, I totally agree. It does require you to suspend your disbelief quite a lot that he wouldn't just get caught straight away, but yeah, I kind of feel like it's allowed to be fantastical. I don't think you're meant to take it as like this could really happen.
It is.
It's just it's kind of the point partly that the adults are put as some kind of idiots in this film partly.
It is the point, and yes, you can do that, and that is exactly why I think that this would resonate pretty well with kids. But that's also the situation that I saw in Emil and Pippi films. And even though I'm not faulting the movie because I've seen this dynamic and this lighthearted atmosphere in movies before, but that's just something that never really worked for me. It didn't work for me in Emil, it didn't work for me in Pippi, and it also doesn't work for me here. That's just something that really isn't for me.
It's just a trope that you don't particularly enjoy.
It's essentially it's a tone. It's a tonal thing for me. Like there's a certain tone with the film, and I personally just don't resonate with that tone that strongly. I need something else there to distract me from the tone or to give me something more. If I'm gonna really love this type of film or a film that carries this light-hearted children's tone in it. It's the same problem I have with the very ending of this film when they are flying over the river or wherever they go to swim. And once again, no, the film doesn't make any crimes. It doesn't really do anything wrong with that scene, but it's just scene that doesn't work for me. I always feel completely distracted from those moments on films. I felt it here, and it's just that the tone is off. I just can't connect with it.
Yeah, well, I think we can all agree that that was also part of the fantasy and not actually happening. No?
Well, who knows? I mean, fucking plate full of meatballs turns into a pigeon here.
No, it was a pigeon on top of the meatballs, of course.
But they didn't put the pigeon into the box. They just put a box or they just take the plate and put it inside the box.
They put the pigeon there between the takes, so it's kind of a surprise for the audience. Like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
played.
Maybe they got a crane also on the set, behind the scenes or something like that.
Yeah, I always took that as that was meant to be like a kind of like magic box, and as it's part of like their magic trick for the show, and that's what they want to be their talent. So it kind of makes sense that they would have a box with like a trapdoor or something. But yeah, clearly it's not something that Deanan approves of.
But he seems to take those pretty lightly also when something like this happens. I don't think there's any repercussions for this pigeon, and there's no repercussions for the other adults being under the structure or similar type of things.
Yeah, it's kind of like he expresses his displeasure, and then it's just like, fine, just don't do it again.
He's not that bad of a guy.
Yeah. which I find is kind of refreshing to have that level of nuance in an authority figure in a film like this. I think it's way more interesting than just them being horrible, like straight up, and having nothing more to them than that.
Yeah. And I believe you would recommend the film.
Yes. No, hate it, avoid.
Yeah. Yeah, without a doubt, recommendation from here too. But
awesome. So 2 hearty recommendations and 1 like, it's not the worst way of spending 70 plus minutes.
I do maintain that your kids might like it. Hell, you might like it also if you're something like Kari, but
it's an adult film. I mean, not that kind of film, but I mean, for adults. Yeah. Moving on. Henrik, you really know you're watching this very long title in Russian. When
your little, really not a problem at all, antics get your grandma killed.
Yeah.
So mine is, you really know you're watching Welcome or No Trespassing when a dopey kid comes up to you and asks what you're doing and you just tell him to get lost.
Very nice. You really know you're watching Welcome or No Trespassing when kids fly over water. Nothing fancy here. That's what happens.
It does. I toyed with having when you get pig cam, because that's another favorite like sequence of mine when you have the camera like close in as the pig is like running amok.
Yeah, it was kind of big cam.
It's not quite like the trike shot from The Shining, but it's pretty good.
There were 2 reviews for this film on IMDb. Writer Olvaso said that, quote, turns people one by one to resistance fighters, in quotation mark, living in illegality, in quotation marks. The ordinary citizens, in quotation marks, of the camp don't know who is the informer, but they do their best to help the persecuted ones, end quote. Then there was HTE-Trasme saying, and the end, with people magically flying across the river to the island, is a bit surreal, but is like a tacit encouragement to break the rules, even if the method necessarily doesn't seem reasonably possible. I thought that was a good observation.
Yeah, I'm just like reimagining this movie as like what's that French film from like 1969 or 70, the like that resistance movie, Army of Shadows. I mean, that could be a Flick Lag Christmas movie. That's about the right tone.
We'll keep that in mind.
Well, it's not too late yet.
I'm sorry, I'm implanting ideas. Maybe I'm the Inichkin of this episode.
I remember in your episode that there was some talk about some parallels or similarities with Battleship Potemkin.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's the main one we talked about is how the camp doctor looks very much like a woman who features in the very famous step sequence of Battleship Potemkin. It's just the shape of her face and the fact that she's wearing these like rounded glasses. Yeah, that is one of my favorite gags in this film. Is that when she yells and it turns into a siren. It's a cheap gag, but because it's so unexpected, it's
using the same shot twice also.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, this film is not above like going, well, I think this gag worked once, so let's just keep repeating it.
There is one rather I guess there's no other way to say it, but inappropriate moment in the beginning 5 minutes when Inochkin goes in his introduction. Quote, "If you must know, I do 100 meters in 2 minutes 12 seconds. If I were a woman, I would be a swimming champion in the USSR." End quote.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's just to do with what the record times were at that time, I assume.
I suppose. Yeah, I guess you can read it differently. Henrik, did you find anything funny about that?
You mean the film or that moment, that quote?
Yeah, that quote.
No.
Yeah.
No. For both of them, no.
I'm trying to fish for something controversial.
You desperately try to get a stronger recommendation out of me.
All right, so this got some positive critical acclaim. As stated, about 13 million viewers in the USSR back then. And I think this is a great point to discuss more Mr. Pitts. So, where can people find your podcast?
Well, on any podcast platform, I think you should be able to find me. So it's just Russophiles Unite movie podcast. So just whatever podcatcher you use, I should be on there. I'm also on the usual social media places. If you just search Russophiles Unite, you should find me on Twitter. And then I've got my own personal account on Twitter as well, which is Alistair_Pitts. So yeah, say hi. Tell me that you hated this movie. Why did I recommend it to you?
And you have a caffeine caffeine addiction.
Affliction, addiction, yes, yeah. I'm on Ko-Fi as well, so yes, I drink too much of the black stuff.
Yeah, you can
yes
drop a dime there.
Yes, that would be very kind. Yes.
Any other links that you want to drop?
Oh, I mean, I suppose I'm on Letterboxd as well. I think my handle is just Ally, which is ALLY, and then _, because I really thought that decision through. Give myself a nice, memorable handle. But probably if you just go to Twitter, you can find my link from there. So yeah, if you're on Letterboxd, look me up, and you'll see other film-related stuff. Oh, I could probably say Podchaser as well. Like, I don't know if you've come across that. As they like to style themselves, the IMDb of podcasts. So if you look me up on there, you can see the other podcast episodes I've guested on. So yes, all your Ally related podcast needs in one place. Woohoo!
Yay!
That was the level of enthusiasm I was going for. Thank
you. This is as enthusiastic as two Finns can get.
Tiredness creeping in.
It's a shared yay from both of us.
And there was much rejoicing.
Yeah. I mean, we Finns tend to open up a bit more if we get to sauna and have our beers, and should try that one.
I was going to say,
it's either sauna or getting drunk.
or
preferably
both.
combined.
Yeah. Just make sure you stay hydrated. So that's definitely a cultural thing that you share with your neighbors across the eastern border.
And there seems to be some confusion who started the sauna concept.
Yeah, I understand that this is a big rivalry when it's kind of like, you know what, it's not that complex an idea. It's possible that it could have originated in multiple places at the same time, or near enough that it doesn't make any difference. Then again, the British have no horse in this race, so maybe I'm don't understand the level of passion that Finns and Russians have for it. So
yeah, well, the word has a very Finnish sound. I have no idea where it's coming from and all, but let's call it a tie on my part. What about Henrik? Any idea?
It doesn't really matter who invented it, because the
you never care about that fact.
Truth is that it's a Finnish thing, and essentially, if you're not a Finn and you're using sauna, that's cultural appropriation. And you should stop it, you horrible beast.
Well, Russians would say that they don't use that word. They much prefer to use their own word, which is banya, which is like bathhouse. So yes, it's yeah. Definitely though we use the word sauna over here, and we don't even pronounce it right. Like I'm guessing it should be more like sauna, but yes.
Yeah, but it's not just the word; it's the place itself.
Right.
Well, like the physical space of sauna, it belongs to the Finns, and everybody else can just get the fuck out.
I remember when I was a kid and my mother had recorded some Pink Panther cartoons on VHS, and I kept being a bit confused because I knew that this is not a Finnish cartoon, but there was a sign on the door that said sauna. So, what is my Finnish word doing in this film? But yeah, I realized that it's used everywhere. Confusing. I would like to put some poem on this episode, but Henrik, tell us
Oh,
what
Jesus God, no.
Wow.
Okay, to be continued. But Henrik, what is our next week's film?
Well, kind of beats me. I have three recommendations from where we can choose, or then you can just dictate your own.
It better be festive.
All of these are extremely festive. The first one is Krampus from 2015, which is pure and clear Christmas horror movie, horror comedy.
To argue with.
Okay.
The second one would be The Children from 2008, because Christmas, most of all, it's a family holiday. And the final would be 2001's Pearl Harbor, because the real Pearl Harbor attacks happened during December 7th. So only a few days until Christmas from those attacks.
A day that will live in infamy.
Pretty much, yeah. Film that will live in infamy.
Yes.
Again, what was the second film?
The Children, 2008.
Oh, this I've seen it before. Yeah, UK horror movie.
Okay.
I
I've never heard of it.
make no confessions. It's a film that has families, and Christmas is all about family.
Fair enough.
I believe it's directed by Tom Shankland. So, these are tough choices. And of course, you didn't come up with anything international. You cheat. Except maybe this UK can be considered, but yeah. Okay, well, how about Krampus then?
Yeah, I'm game. I've never seen the film myself, so
Okay.
First viewings and all that.
Okay. Adventure. Hilarious. Yeah, I guess it's time for some poem. Alexander Bloch from Russia has this legendary poem that I stumbled on accidentally, as you guys, I guess you stumbled by being accidental about it, but it's called Night Street Lamp Drugstore. And it goes like this. Night Street Lamp Drugstore, a dull and meaningless light. Go on and live another quarter century. Nothing will change. There's no way out. You'll die, then start from the beginning. It will repeat just like before. Night, icy ripples on a canal. Drugstore, street, lamp. And just like here, next week you have to start again listening to the next Flick Lab episode. It will repeat, just like before. There's no way out. And
before you start, make sure that you visit the local drugstore.
And Henrik, I guess we should talk about our format change here once again for the third time to inform our listeners. You can go ahead this time.
Okay, so yeah, as Kari already mentioned, the format of the podcast will change.
Oh.
Quite a lot following the New Year's hiatus when we take our break and then return with the podcast. As some of you may have noticed, the tone and the style of the podcast has been changing. Well, essentially through the entire course of our run. Like we are already pretty far from the point where we or from what we started off originally, when this was much more making fun and being way too snarky and nitpicky for our own good. But yeah, we are gonna go even further. Following the holidays, this is gonna become a bi-weekly product, no longer just weekly. And we also are gonna, well, if not entirely stop, at least limit a hell of a lot of our previous habit of going through one film in each episode. And we are going to take a kind of a larger, more over-encompassing look on themes, most likely going through several films in one episode.
The hell are we doing here? Who told you this? 4 movies for 1 episode.
Essentially what we are doing, we aim to ease off some of the background work that we have to do for every episode.
Right.
And the way where this seems to be going is that we are gonna do even more work.
So best laid plans, eh?
I'm afraid that knowing myself, this is probably be a nightmare. It will
On Elm Street Part 4.
Yeah, and that at least, going through the rest of the Nightmare films. We could do something like this where we go through, because nobody wants to listen to Nightmare 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 million episodes separately. So it's better to talk about it as like one phenomena. What the hell happened type of episode.
Mm-hmm.
And same for Hellraiser, for example. But when it comes to more international, what our audiences might actually be interested in is, let's say, we could look at a certain period in time, and maybe look at different new wave films from different countries. We could look at different trilogies once again, but with the context of maybe some country, or looking at the cinema of a particular country. We should visit Azerbaijan and Armenia at some point, I hope.
Yeah, when it comes to international cinema, it may very well be that we still on international cinema we stick to the one film per episode structure, just so that we can kind of shine more light to the international cinema and individual pieces. Because when it comes to the American cinema, it's much more kind of a piecemeal, more of a McDonald's movie experience, and therefore it's a hell of a lot easier to just sum all of them up, like take the entire rest of the Hellraiser franchise, just deal with it all at once.
Well, if we're gonna talk about cinema of Azerbaijan, then that surely is gonna encompass more than one film. Unfortunately, Henrik.
Well, I did my best to save us some trouble, and there you go.
There I go.
Yeah, this is on you.
Blocking up the escape route.
Yep.
All right. Once again, Ali, thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, well, thank you very much for having me. It's been a really fun chat.
I certainly hope so. That I hope you're not traumatized or anything.
No, I think the odds of that happening were way lower than with Come and See, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
But still, hey, before we stop completely, since Come and See once again got named, and both Welcome and Come and See being from Klimov, and me getting flack for not endorsing Welcome enough. Honest answer, guys. Which one was a better film?
Well, how can you say that, really? They are so two different beasts, tonally.
Extremely easily. Come and See.
Well, maybe.
Yeah, I think it is an apples and oranges thing, but I think you can definitely see that it's this, maybe not the same director, but it's a director of a very high caliber for both. Yeah, I mean, obviously, Come and See has more of a weighty theme and is more resonant in that regard. But I still think as a comedy, yeah, Welcome or No Trespassing has lots to recommend about it. But yeah, very different beasts, as you say, Gary.
Yeah.
I still take this as a vindication.
Well, in a way, at least for me as a Finnish person, I suppose Come and See talks to me more than No Trespassing. But
There you see it. There you see it.
but
That's my
all in all, if I would recommend films from Elem Klimov, then definitely check out both of them and see his range. I guess that would do it for this week.
Yeah, we once again have completely butchered one international classic. So
Yeah. Thank you for our listeners. You know where to find us as well, in pretty much the same places as Ali Pitts. So check those out. The continuation for this conversation is right there. Go comment on Facebook. And please activate that place because it's dead as all hell at the moment.
well, the last time our Facebook got activated, you know, just please don't activate our Facebook again.
Only nice comments, please.
Well, I guess the appropriate way to close this episode is everyone together. 3, 2, 1.
La 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 la.
I'm so ashamed of you.
That is a boycott from Henrik.
See you next week.
Until then.
До свидания. All right, that was fun.